All right, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Pilipinx-American Stories podcast. We here want to better understand the different aspects of the Philippine American diaspora. We cover topics such as, but are not limited to, history, community, and Filipinx American culture. And I am your host, Alfredo. And we are back with season two, episode two. And I am excited to bring our second guest for the season, Trixi AKA TheThoughtFulBeast. Trixi is a podcast host, a YouTuber, a dancer, a mental health advocate, and one third of the Fil-Am Collective. Honestly, this list can go on for days, but I want to just talk a little bit about just my little reflections on the episode for today, or the episode for this week, my bad. So, this was a very interesting episode, and again, this is probably something that I'll be saying, and I've said this for episode one and everything, but there has been a lot of amazing conversations, and Trixie was one of those people that contributed to this amazing vibe that's been set out for the rest of the season, and I can't emphasize that enough. Like, it was one of those conversations where we had something else originally planned, but it was derailed, but I guess in a good way. It was more so like we went more in depth into different conversations, and I enjoyed it so much. We were checking in with each other in terms of like how we're doing with our mental health during this pandemic. Then we started digging a little bit more into like Trixie's origin and everything, and like how she's been like adapting, how she's been growing, and then we also especially like talked about like what our goals are as artists and how other people can like I guess try to figure out what their goals really are when it comes to whatever their artistic platform is. And I can't even emphasize this enough. The episode was like very amazing, and I'm super happy to like bring this episode for you today. And one of the last things before like we start this episode is the advice section, which was originally meant to be a completely different question, but the question that I had for Trixie for this little section was how can artists be their most authentic selves, and she offered some really good advice that essentially brought the conversation full circle. And I'm very excited for people to hear this episode out. But with that being said, I bring you episode two. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. We're back for episode two. For our guest today, we have our guest is a dancer, a choreographer, a visual storyteller, a mental health advocate, and a podcast host. We have Trixie, aka Thoughtful Beast. Trixie, how are you doing today?
Hi, I am good. Thank you for asking.
I'm curious. So, okay. Before we go into like the bulk of it, I think I remember meeting you and the rest of like the Fil-Am Film Collective back in. I think this was back in March. I was telling Marissa this on the last episode, but yeah, this was at an event that was I think y'all were hosting, and it was for Benito and Drama's little like
Oh,
yeah, movie showcase.
yes, yeah. So we were doing some interviews on the outside and getting some B-roll and footage of the events. Yes.
Oh,
Yes, we
okay.
were doing
So
that.
when I saw that, I was like, oh, they're probably like interns for like a different organization. But then like I started like digging more into like the Film Collective stuff, and I'm just like, oh, y'all are doing stuff. And then I started digging into like everyone else's stuff, and I'm just like, everyone has some like really dope variety in terms of the stuff you're creating. I'm just like, oh, this is cool. And then I specifically go into yours and everything, like, oh, you do a lot of like mental health stuff. You've been doing like a lot of podcasting. I'm like, this is really cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, our group, I love our little group. I love Marissa and Adrian. It's so funny because basically we're like, well, we're friends and we like doing stuff and we're accountable people. Let's do stuff together. And like that's just what it's been. We've kind of taken a break um because of COVID. Literally the only reason why we stopped because we already had, Marissa already had a script that we were reading and we're re-rehearsing, but right now it's not, safe to just be around each other. But we are constantly in each other's lives in other ways. So I mean, I love them, and I'm glad we got to meet at that event. I love Benito and Emma.
Oh yeah, I've been feeling that whole COVID thing. Marissa was actually saying that like a few days ago on like our episode, and it's yeah, it's been one thing to like adjust to it, especially since it was so abrupt, and then like everyone had all these plans to release some things, but I mean, we kind of just have to wait. But I'm happy that y'all have each other like during this time too.
Yeah. Yes. Dude. Yeah, support is super necessary during COVID. It's really interesting because, like we were saying, like it's been like 6 months. And luckily we found out, that being outside is pretty safe, as long as everyone takes precautions. But oh my gosh, that relief alone was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna die. It's just like, and it's not dramatic. It's like, no, we really don't know. And then, with all the protests, um, and then the science with that just showing, like the protests did not increase outbreaks or anything. So it's like, oh, okay, so we're fine if we're outside and it's well ventilated. Cool. So, I feel like that gave everyone like um, just kind of literally more room to breathe, but also just kind of seeing like, oh, like what can I do? Like there are options, like the people who are protesting, they can continue to protest. People who want to do film and stuff, it's like, well, how do we shift that to being outside, or how do we shift collaborations to being me at home and you at your own home and sending files over? Um, but at least being outside is like really nice having that, especially, dude, because we're like San Diego in the summer. Like, so it's been really nice to be able to still, enjoy outside. Some places have they have a little too much going on for my comfortability, but I'm glad that there is some reprieve.
Yeah, honestly, I totally love that, especially like it is a literal breath of fresh air to be outside
Mhm.
where it's safe. Granted, I do stay away from some places where it's a little bit more dense, so to speak, but
Yeah.
like I'm happy that I could be outside for the most part while still being safe and everything.
Yes. Yes. There are some not this past weekend, maybe 2 weekends ago. My boyfriend took our roommates and stuff to this beach, and it's like, oh yeah, it's like it's just like a minute walk down, maybe three, but it's like, oh, we're climbing. Like we're climbing, but it was kind of worth it because it was in this it was between two popular beaches, like in Encinitas. I think we were in no, Del Mar. Sorry, Del Mar. So like we were in like this place where only like the surfers went, so they weren't on the beach, or people were running from one populated place to the other. So it was pretty like we were alone. We were like a good amount of alone, and I was like, yes, this is so nice.
That is like an introvert's dream, like to be on the beach without having like so much contact. I love that so much.
Yes, yes. I loved it too. It was very nice.
Oh, I'm so glad that you've been having that, but I think we could actually like move into like the bulk of it. So
Let's
a
do it.
lot of a lot of your platform goes by the Thoughtful Beast, like your Instagram, your YouTube. But I've always been curious since like I've been looking at your stuff, like where does that name even come from?
Oh, okay. So when I first started thinking about wanting to do mental health advocacy publicly and digitally, again, like I went to Twitch first. And I think I went there because like my roommates at the time were my boyfriend, who is a gamer, and so is our other roommate at the time was also a gamer. And so they super knew Twitch, like that was in their life way before it became what it is now. And so I was like, sure, why not try it out? Like live streaming, that sounds nice. Um, so everyone has their sort of like digital guys, like, like their persona or whatever. And so I was trying to think, who would I want to be? And I I landed on the Thoughtful Beast because I like the dichotomy of, like strength, like so beast, like that meaning, like a strength, and thoughtful because I am like a really thoughtful person. I try really hard to not just take other people's feelings into account, but just try to take account what is happening in the dynamics between like relationships, dynamics between like people and law, or people and what mental health is, like different kind of concepts. Like I do put a lot of thought into that, and I do care a lot. And with mental health and mental illness, it's a lot of thinking, it's a lot of self-reflection. So I landed on the Thoughtful Beast because I liked the thought of being like strong physically and mentally. And also, I think a part of it too was originally I wanted to do fitness, or I was in fitness. So originally, this was like my fitness guys. I was doing mental health too, but I think I started it. No, I think it was like at the same time. It was a really weird time because I used to be dance tricks fitness. And then as I switching over, I'm like, no, I still like the aspect of strength. Um, and so yeah, the Thoughtful Beast. And then I'm gonna keep it forever because I paid for that website and that domain name.
No, keep that IP as long as possible
I
because like
will.
that is a dope name.
Thank you.
I like how we kind of went into like your kind of like screen name origin because it's like you get to see a little bit of the transition, but like I like how you were digging deeper in it because like you were saying with the whole thing of the beast exuding strength, but then like you're digging deeper in terms of thoughtfulness. I'm just like that is literally you when it comes to like the stuff you're creating right now.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm curious. So you've been dancing, you've been doing choreography, you've been doing film with like the Fil-Am Film Collective, and as well as like your own thing, and you've been doing your podcast. Like you're basically like an all around artist in that way. But how did this whole like artist side of you like come to be? Were you always were you always an artist? Was this something that was recent, or like how did like what does your origin story look like in terms of being an artist?
So I was a very, very shy child. Um, very, very, very painfully shy. But I really like to sing. So, my parents like enrolled me in singing lessons. Like I was privileged enough to be able to afford that with my family, so that was great. I wanted to dance, but I was way too freaking shy. Like I have two god sisters who I grew up with, and they're both professional dancers. They both grew up dancing, and I wanted to too, but again, I was too shy. So, solo things like voice lessons worked better for me. Um, and then I just kind of I always did those extracurriculars like in high school. Like I was in choir. I ended up joining like the dance team. I loved I loved everything artsy. Like I liked acting even though I wasn't great at it. um I was a really bad high school actor, which is really really strange, but it was true. And that's okay. And then I there it's really strange because I had points in my life where I was doing all those extracurricular activities, and I like in high school, my English AP teacher, like she I don't even know why. She basically was discouraging me from dancing and doing all the things like that cuz she made me think that I was like failing English AP. So she's like, "You really need to hunker down. Like your brain is here, 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 here. Like and you just need to like concentrate and da 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 da." And I thought like, holy shit, like I'm failing, right? Like I can't fail, like that's not gonna go. And then later on I found out I was just getting a fucking B. Can I curse? Is that
No, go
okay?
ahead. Like full
Okay.
like this yeah, this is raw right now.
I was getting a B, but that was after I already quit my dance team and I quit all this stuff. Oh, and another reason why I thought it was really serious too is because she told at the time it was my senior year, so I joined marching band because I wanted to do color guard and winter guard, and so she had my freaking like not color guard, my marching band teacher talked to me, and so I really thought I was failing or something, which for me it was like what how. Um, and I know that, for me, all those more artistic things, they obviously meant way more to me because I gave my effort there way more than I did to other places in school. But I was still doing well. Like it was an English AP class and I was getting a B. And so when I found that out after I quit, I was really mad. Um, and then da 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 da, I went to college not knowing what to do. I took a couple dance classes and I took this advanced jazz class because I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm advanced, maybe not. And it was really, really difficult for me. I was not advanced. I'm gonna say that. I was really not advanced. I wasn't horrible. I just wasn't advanced. But, I could keep up enough to be like, I feel like this is helping me. And at the end of that semester, I took the final twice because some girl needed she couldn't be there for the actual final, so she was asking anyone if they would do it again just so she wouldn't be alone. And I said, yeah, why not? Um, and that gave us a chance to talk to our professor, afterwards. We were just kind of talking, and I asked him I asked him basically, like, what do you think? Like, how do you think I'm doing? And he I mean, I know he was trying to, like, be kind to me, but basically, he was saying, like, what did he say? He's basically saying, "Obviously, there's some natural talent there, but this is not for you," is basically what he said. It was not in those words, but that was, like, the gist of it. And I was like, "Okay," like, I super, like, straight Asian face, like, no emotion, like, I just, like, shut it down, and I said, "Okay," and I said, "Thank you." I said goodbye to the other girl. I went on the bus, home, and I cried. Like, I cried publicly on the bus with, like, a million other people on it, and I was so embarrassed, but I couldn't help it. Um, and, by the time I got home, like, it was like a 20-minute bus ride. It wasn't that bad. But by the time I got home, like, my roommate was like, "Oh my gosh, what's wrong?" And I realized that I had never cared about anything at all as much as I cared about, like, that comment and being, quote, unquote, "bad at dance." And so I was like, "Oh, I wanna do this. Like, I actually care. Like, this is, like, me, like, I actually care. Like, it's very clear to me. It's not like, "Oh, maybe this." I was like, "No, I wanna do this." And so from then on, I put dance first. Every decision I made, I always tried to put dance first. Like, part of me also, like, addressed my mental illness so that I could keep dancing and I could keep making art. Um, and that has always just been me ever since. Even when I got more into mental health advocacy, it's always been a goal of mine to intersect those two things, art and my mental health advocacy, and be able to express myself, and share my stories through art, whether that be dance, film, acting, or creating a podcast or live shows, or just creating spaces for other people to be in. And that's just, even now, like, that's just my guiding star. Like, I have my goals, but I'm not very much like, "It has to look like this," "It has to look like A, B, and C and be colored, like, purple with sparkles and da 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 da." It's like, "No, I know I want this. I want that intersection. I want to live my life serving others and fulfilling myself creatively. What can I do?"
Ooh, that is like that's definitely one to sit on because it sounds like, at least from what I'm hearing, that like the whole mental health,
Hello?
creative, like artistic side is
Hello?
essentially like what your foundation is in terms of like the art that you're doing, and now you have like that kind of like
Sorry,
mindset going.
Alfredo?
What's up?
Sorry, you cut out for me right after you said, "That's one to sit on."
Oh, okay, my bad. So it's kind of like you have like your foundation with like that intersection with mental health as well as like art and everything. So now like you can basically create whatever you want now that you have like that mindset going forward. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice because it helps me, like, define success for myself, which is still hard, but at least I know that, where I know a lot of people still are just like, "What am I doing?" So at least I feel like, "Oh, I don't know exactly what I'm doing, but I definitely know the direction I'm going towards."
Which is really like the only, I mean that's like that's really nice to have, especially since it's so like in terms of like artistry and everything, it's like, oh, where do I go, like what do I create, like do I have to make like whatever the next like big thing is, do I have to like make some kind of choreography that like kind of outdoes everyone or like is completely different, but it's like no, you don't need to like be like the most or like the best at everything. You just have to know what you want in it.
Exactly. And I mean, to be honest, I have to remind myself of that often. Like, I don't have the highest, wait, how do I put this? That sounding like totally depressing. I just don't, I've never been the most confident person. And that's something like I definitely have to work on. I definitely struggle with the concept of being enough. Um, so I do have to tell myself those things, and those are common traps a lot of us fall into. But again, with like my guiding star, it helps me. It really does help me stay on track. And then again, like telling myself, like, no, remember, this is how you define success for you. Like, it's okay. Like what you said. Like, I don't have to be the best. Like, I just have to be like the best at being me and giving what I can. And, learning for that to be enough is really difficult, especially in like our capitalistic society, that really like is super competition driven. It's really hard, but the more I tell myself these things and the more I really believe in them, the less freaking stressed out I get, like the happier I get.
Honestly, I resonate with that thought so much, especially like coming from someone that. So just a little bit of background on like my whole dance history and everything. Like I've been b-boying or breaking for like people that don't know. I've been doing that for
Oh,
about like 10 years now. Yeah, I've been doing that for like 10 years, and like get when you went into the whole like, oh yeah, like stressing out thing, like for me personally, like especially during like b-boy jams and all that, I do get like some anxiety like before like battle start, or even before like the preliminary start and everything. I'm just like, oh man, am I gonna be like doper than everyone else? But like now that I've actually had time to sit on it, it's like I don't really have to be like the dopest. I just have to like rep who I am. Like even if I don't make it past like prelims or whatever, as long as I'm doing like who I am, like that's all that really matters for me.
yeah, and like that's great. And also because like, there's enough competition with just yourself, and trying to be your best. Like that is already hard.
Well, 100%. It's like you're already like you have other battles that are like going around you, but like the biggest one is definitely the one inside.
Yeah. Oh, too true. Too, too true.
Okay, so since we're going on that whole topic of like the inside and everything, you do center your work a lot around like mental health and everything. Like you were mentioning this before with like your visual storytelling, like film. Like what was why is that something you like? Why is that something that you heavily focus on with your work?
I think in general, people don't talk about mental illness or mental health. Coming from, Filipino culture, and a lot of other Asian cultures do this as well, and minority cultures, talking, again, not minority, maybe immigrant, maybe I want to say immigrant, maybe I want to say minority. I'm going to say BIPOC and many other BIPOC cultures. Mental health is something that we don't speak about. I think in where we are living, being able to address mental health issues is kind of a privilege, which is really unfortunate. But like think about self-care, right? When I think about self-care and yoga, I literally picture a blonde girl in PB on a yoga mat, like kind of naked, you know, like because that's kind of what's been advertised to us as yoga and self-care, which is ridiculous because I'm like, yoga was not started by a blonde woman, that's someone else's culture. And it's not even about like pointing about cultural appropriation. Well, a little bit it is, but like it's just the fact that there are so many healing things in our own cultures, but we're not allowed to them somehow. Like we're supposed to keep working, we're supposed to keep our heads down. And so the people who are privileged enough, they get to reap the benefits of the healing in our cultures. It's really strange. Like it's not, and there's different reasons for that. Like I'm a child of immigrants, right? So my parents moved here to give me a better life. That's a lot of us. And they're doing the best they can. And unfortunately, um the best they can sometimes meant they can't address their own mental health, right? They can't address their own mental health. They have to work. They have to provide for us. They have to stay strong. They have to do better than everyone else just to get enough, right? Just to make like the same amount. All of that mentality. And it's not, and it's, I can't say they're wrong. You know what I mean? It's like they're doing their best and this is what they have been taught. But again, being here, being a child of immigrants, seeing how much that hurt my family, how much that hurts other families, how much that has hurt me and other children, I I feel the need to talk about it. It's just not talked about in our culture, you know, like there's no time to be sad. Like, what do you mean be sad? You got to go to work or you got to go to school. Like, why are you sad? Why are you crying? It's just like there are reasons. Oh God. You know, and I don't think parents who subscribe to that sort of thinking, I don't think it's necessarily malice. Like, I really don't. I think it's just that wasn't taught to them. They weren't taught coping skills. Maybe the most coping skills we were taught were like praying and religion. Um, or at least I can say that maybe for Filipinos, you know, praying and religion, and that can be a coping mechanism, but you know, that's not enough. So because I feel like I am quote unquote okay enough to speak to mental health issues, to speak publicly about my mental illnesses, I want to help take away the stigma, especially in our cultures, um, where unfortunately, you know, like emotion is not welcome. Like your problems aren't welcome. And that's a tough way to live that I don't want more people to live in that way.
Ooh, that's such a big one to unpack, especially also coming from a family of like immigrants and all that. Like, yeah, honestly, to talk about mental health, I guess from their perspective, it is like such a big luxury, especially since a lot of like immigrant families from like I don't know, maybe even like from the start of like the 20th century, everyone was kind of like on survival mode, trying to like prove themselves, like you were saying, and all that. Like it's tough to have to talk about those things, especially if you were never taught those things before.
Yeah.
Also, if like you don't have those kind of that kind of access within like a group of people, especially with people that look like you, that's even tougher. Like, dang,
Yes.
I don't even. There's so again, there's so much to unpack with this, and like you were saying, this kind of thing is like intergenerational in the sense that like if those things are not talked about now, that whole like stigma is going to be carried on to like the next generation and everything. It's like you need to start now if like you want like some progress to be made. But even then, like even though we are like starting now in terms of these conversations, it's still difficult because like you were saying, like one thing that I hear often, like not necessarily from like my family, but I see a lot of like Filipino families talk about, or like their parents saying, "Oh, anak, just pray," or
Yeah.
whatever, just to get like that whole sadness or depression away. But that's not how it works. There's like a deeper thing to this. There's so many layers that go into mental health, and just like praying is like cool and everything, but like there's so much more work to be done when it comes to this. And I hear what you're saying, and I'm just like, yeah, this is a long road ahead to just manage even just like the littlest bit of like mental health for like Filipinos or just like immigrants or BPOCs in general.
Yes, it is, and you're so right. Like we do have to start now because that generational trauma is super real and it's already here. So you know, like we we have to tackle it now. Like because also like we're living through it now. You know, we all have our own traumas. Like the fact that we were not taught any sort of coping mechanisms besides maybe prayer, like that's not okay, you know. And it's super interesting like you said, like especially like with Filipinos cuz like a bunch of people in the beginning came over as nurses, right? They came over as nurses and they're taking care of other people, and so it's so weird that you have people coming over from another country constantly to take care of Americans, take care of Americans, and they can never take care of themselves. And like feeling that literally by the pressures of their bosses, the pressures of that they have to provide for their family. And then, you know, like kind of like the shame with like, you know, like it would feel weird to be like, I'm a nurse, but I can't take care of myself. Like, I'm struggling. So, like, and I'm taking care of you. Like, how is that supposed to feel okay? So unfortunately, a lot of it gets brushed away. And, that goes past Filipino culture. That's also like American culture. Other, like, other people can feel this too. It doesn't just have to be Filipinos or other BIPOC. Like, it's just this cultural thing that keeps happening. We just keep pushing away our emotions at the expense of like what money, and not even enough money to live healthily anyways. um but it's hard, right? Because we still have that thing, going back to being like, immigrants of children, or just like an immigrant nation. Not an immigrant nation, I take that back. Of immigrant children having immigrant parents, where we think we need to be so grateful for everything we have because this is better than where we came from. And it's just like, yeah, being grateful is totally fine, but it shouldn't be to the point where we shut off other parts of humanity, where we shut off the fact that other people might be mistreating us and abusing us, and we're being treated unfairly, being paid unfairly. Like, we can't be so grateful that we make those other things disappear because we're just not looking at them. They're still there. They haven't actually disappeared.
Oh, that's also really big because it's like, oh yeah, you left this country that didn't have like you weren't having as much as you are like right now, but it's like you're entering a different country. You still like problems don't like exactly just go away like out of nowhere. Like every country or like every place that you're in, there's always some kind of problem that happens, and it's just like no, it just doesn't disappear like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting, especially it is so interesting, right now the Philippines ain't doing so great either. Um, they're not having a great time either. And it's so strange because some people are like, it's still better here, and some people are like, no, it's not. Or like, oh, we're now becoming like the Philippines, like we're now coming into another dictatorship. So what does that even mean for like you and your American dream? And it makes me wonder a little bit about how, like, maybe that's why some Filipinos do back Trump. Maybe they have to have their immigration. They have to have this life worth it, their choice is worth it. Because if not, then why did they do all this? So they're going to believe that our country is great, that our country doesn't have problems, that people who are talking about racism are just like whiny little complainers. And that's really sad because that just that pits us against each other, and it tears each other down. But you can kind of see how it makes sense though, you know?
Ooh, going back to the whole mental health thing, like just accepting how things are or just like going along with how like everything is, it's like you're kind of avoiding like what's going on, like avoiding you're kind of avoiding what's going on with like the country, but you're also avoiding what's going on like like internally, like you're not taking care of like what's going on. I mean, like yeah, there's still gonna be work to be done. Like capitalism does affect all of us and all that. Like it's not gonna go away anytime soon unless somebody has a plan to just like overhaul like how like the economic system is going to work, but right now that's not happening anytime soon. We got to take care of ourselves as much as possible. We can't like be outputting so much when we're like so drained, like mentally, physically, emotionally, like all aspects of health.
Yeah, we do. It's and it's so hard, like, because it's like, how, right? Like, how do I address this? How do I address these tough conversations? Like with my parents or my Lolo and Lola. Like, how am I supposed to talk about these things? And it's really hard. And I don't know. For me, like, I think one of the easiest ways is just like trying to tell people, and sometimes awkwardly convince people of their own worth, right? Like, that's so hard, like decolonizing ourselves and just be like, no, mom, like, you're such a fucking hard worker. Like, you are worth that amount of money, like, you are worth every freaking cent. Like, what? Just because you weren't born here? Like, you're so educated, though, and, you're super skilled, and saying that to each other. And hopefully, instead of like shaming each other into doing well and stuff, hopefully we can just be like, nah, dude, like, I'm there for you. Like, you got this. Like, you are worth that amount of money. Like, you just do deserve this job because look, you put all this work. You're very smart. You're like super driven. and hopefully, those are one of the things that we can change. Instead of shaming each other, we're actually like holding each other up and reminding each other of like our own different skills. Yeah, because the other way
Oh,
sucks.
I love this so much. This is such a healing kind of like discussion and everything. I'm just like, is this even my podcast anymore? Is this yours? This sounds like one of your discussions.
Open conversation is great, and I love talking to you, and like that's why it can be so easy. Like you're super open, like you're down for it. Some people just get uncomfortable, and I mean it's fine, let's chill. But like you're just really easy to talk to.
Well, I mean, when it comes to that stuff, like you kind of have to be like you have to be kind of comfortable with the uncomfortable because it's like, yo, I don't want to like I'm like 26 right now. I don't want to face this when I'm like having kids and stuff like that. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna have other things to take care of. Let me take care of like this hard stuff now.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, and I mean, that's what a lot of my 20s were, like going through mental illness. Like, oh my gosh, it was like the worst. Like when I left my 20s, I was like, I'm free. Like it really did feel like that. And part of that was like I did a lot of work to work towards the end of my 20s. I was in a much better mental space than I was like in my earlier 20s or even mid 20s. And I do believe that taking that time and effort now can really can honestly sets you up for a better future. Like learning how to deal with your own insecurities is really important, because if you don't, then you start projecting them onto your spouse. You're always going to be super insecure, or whoever, your partner is, and then you start projecting it onto your children because you don't want them to make the mistakes that you did, but you never learned any skills to teach them how to avoid that. So instead, you're just yelling at them because you don't know what else to do. And that's a cycle that can easily repeat. And none of it comes from hate, and all of it comes from love, but there's not enough skill there. There's not enough information, which is why, like, we need to talk about this now. We need to start doing the healing now. We need to start learning now.
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna let that like last part. I'm gonna just like bask on that part like a little bit and just let that digest because that's really heavy. But I kind of want to go into like our little like mid-segment thing. I'm gonna be kind of jumping around just because I'm just like, oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like where this direction is going. But like, so for the mid-segment interview portion, I usually ask people like, oh, what kind of dream projects do they have, or like what kind of artistic ventures they want to go towards. Like, do you have a dream project, or do you have like a big artistic venture that you want to work towards next?
I have many. So I'm going to be making a dance film. Benito and Emma are actually going to come on my producers in January, but like it's so weird with COVID. But I do have that bigger project coming on that they're going to produce, where it is about it's a dance film about mental health, and it's about how a lot of mental illness is unseen. Like that whole thing where it's just like you don't really know, what people are going through. So it's going to be about three young women trying to go on and live a day. It's like a life in three different for three different women suffering from mental illness, and everyone's gonna be Asian. or at least my main people are gonna be Asian, because I'm putting myself in it. Which is also kind of why I started doing my own projects more and more. It was the Thoughtful Beast. I got tired of waiting for people to cast me, and also like, for money. So it got like really difficult. I'm like, you know what? I'm obviously gonna still audition for other things, but I'm also just gonna start working for myself. Um, I'm gonna have my friend. Do you know Alyssa Junius is? Have you met her
Um,
yet?
Probably if she was at another event, then I might have.
She was like at the October one, for the Halloween. Like I went with her. But she's gonna be in it, and then my other friend Hannah. So I'm Filipino, Alyssa is Filipino and half black, and Hannah is half Japanese, half white. And that's gonna be my cast unless things happen, which they might in COVID. Who knows? Like, because who knows when this is going to be made. But I'm really excited to make that project. I'm excited to make a project that has like, that representation, especially that Filipino representation. I'm really excited for that, and to create that. I also have, I mean, there's a lot of things. What do I really want to talk about right now? So, like, the little things that I'm trying to do, and this is where I'm just like, "Yee!" And I'm kind of holding myself back because I'm like freaking out. Is like I want to make journals, and like I want to make journals to sell. And I think journaling and reflecting can be really helpful. I want to make journals because I'm such a big advocate of getting professional help, but at the same time, I know that's not always available to people right now. So I think things like journaling, can be really helpful for, and it also can be helpful as a like, oh crap, what is the word? It's like it can also be like supplemental, right? Like mental health is the best. I think, in my opinion, mental health is the best when you get professional help and you also have other things. You have other things like journaling, you have other things like support groups, you have other things like if people like qigong, or if people like gardening, like all these different things need to work together so that your mental health is, spiffy. It's nice and shiny, or however you want to describe it. There's like a million things that go into it. So I think journaling can be really helpful, for mental health. And then I also want to make like dance mental health classes, which that is the thing that gives me the biggest question mark in my head. Um, because I don't necessarily know how to do this. And I think what I'm going to do is like envision a class and at first just open it to my friends. And then I'll let you know a little more later when I figure this out better. But that's what I want to do.
Yo, okay, so I know this doesn't have like video or anything, but like my eyes are like super like wide-eyed right now, and I'm like, the only thing that's really going through my mind is that like Futurama meme or Fries like take my money. I'm just like, how do I support this right now? This is big. Like, is that film like with Benito and Emma? Is that going to be like, is that going to be part of the Perspective film series like sometime in the future? Like, I want to go to that.
I don't know. I don't know. I hope so. Really, like part one is just like, let's somehow get this made, because like they're working on other projects right now that it's really hard. Like I'm going to help with production, like with the actual production, like on set and stuff production, but it's just like we can't even get there right now, you know? Like it's really interesting for film right now. So I don't know when that's happening, but until then, what's going to be fun is that I'm going to get more back into discovering my own, making my own stuff like by myself, and that will just prepare me, for what I'm going to do with that bigger film.
Ooh, that is
So
so
yeah.
that is so dope. Like, it's kind of just you're kind of like prepping for that like that next step when it comes to like all the other stuff is like out once COVID is like at least like a lot more handled.
Yeah, and it's just, yeah, yeah. That's, I mean, like, cause like, what else can I do at this point? It's just like, well, I don't want to stop completely, and I think taking breaks sometimes, like, that's great. Like, people should, like, it's so interesting because when when quarantine happened and lockdown happened, everyone's like, oh, no, I can get on that side hustle. Where it's just like everyone went into that, and then a bunch of people went into burnout mode, including me. And then I'm like, I have no idea why I didn't see this as an opportunity to be like, oh my God, Trixie, you can relax. You can relax and you can take a break and you can reflect on what you want and what's going great in your life and what are the things that are making you so stressed out you feel like vomiting every morning. Like it's so interesting, but like that's how our culture is, and that's what we need to like address. Some people, dude, if that hustle life is your life and it really does bring you joy, hell yeah, like keep going. But that's not for everyone, and that's something that we all have to like remind ourselves, like who are you really, what kind of environment do you work in? Well, you can't just say this environment because it's the one that's being advertised to your face on social media every day.
Ooh, ask those big questions, and especially it's kind of weird to say this, but I'm kind of thankful for like the whole stay-at-home order and everything because I could not escape a lot of like things I was not taking care of mentally, and I'm just like at the time like right now like my mental health is significantly better than what it was at the beginning. Because like again, I could not escape it. Just like,
Hmm.
yo, I gotta take care of myself right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and that I've heard many people say that. They're just like obviously they hate COVID, but they're so thankful for this opportunity to where they had to face themselves and know it was not fun, but yes, it has made their lives better.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I kind of want to focus on like your podcast and YouTube and everything. But before that, I think you might have mentioned this before, but what is something you want your audience to get from, I guess, just from your work in general, from like your dance, like your podcast, from YouTube, from films, like what is like the main thing you want people to get out of that?
I so I one of my biggest motivators, and I think I said this, but maybe not, is just like I don't want people to suffer the way that I have. And so with my work, I try to address that, like how can I make people suffer less? And for me, I hope with all the different things I make, at the very least, I'm hoping I'm providing that like validation and that validation that dude, like you're not alone. Like a lot of people like say that, but I hope with my work and everything I do that I'm actually showing that, because it's so easy to be like, you're not alone, it's gonna be fine. So with my work, I'm really hoping that I'm showing like, dude, you're really not alone. Um, this is really, really difficult. I hope I provide some sort of validation, or like the guests I have at my podcast. Hopefully, someone listening at home can relate to them and feel validated that way with their experiences. I really also I want people to know that, their voice is important. Like one thing that I focus on with my podcast is just like I want everyday people. Like, I don't I would never want this to turn into like a celebrity thing. Like if for some reason I get that opportunity, I'll start another freaking podcast or something. But for like the things that I'm doing now, it's just like no, 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 no. I believe in like the this sounds really weird and corny, but I don't have any other words for it. Like the power of everyday people. Like I really do believe in that. And I believe that everyone's story is important. And there's not enough of that. People, I know what it feels like to feel, again, not enough. I struggle with that all the time. And I know what it feels like to feel completely worthless, especially living with mental illness. And I want to give a voice to people, like to talk about those experiences so that we can show each other that we're not alone, and like show each other hope, really, right? Like like I do this because I'm in a place where I can publicly speak about a lot of the things that have happened in my life. And it's not easy, but I think, you know, it's worth talking about. And I do love making those spaces to where like everyday people can come on and share their story. It's just like, just because you're not famous doesn't mean like what happened into your like what happened in your life wasn't important. Like that's dumb. Like, and I it's kind of like super anti-celebrity. Like I'm not meaning to shade celebrities, but sometimes I feel like we forget about each other. We forget about like the strength and that person you're sitting near while you're at like McDonald's or something. That's a real I wish I chose something better, but I didn't.
No, but
Um,
it's like it feels like it feels like way more because it's like, oh, it's someone that's directly within like your proximity or like someone within like your own circle like saying these kinds of stories, and it's just like it just means so much more when like it's someone that you actually know, because it's like, oh yeah, I could like it doesn't feel like as there doesn't feel like as much disconnect if it was someone that was like, I don't know, I don't can't even think of like any celebrity like Lana Condor, like her celebrity status is probably like way higher than some people, but it's like it would be a lot harder to approach someone that's like her rather than someone that's like within like our friend groups and everything.
yeah. And it's important, to recognize like the power within ourselves. And I want people to share their stories, you know, like that's part for me, that's part of getting rid of the stigma. It's like that's why I have my podcast. It's just like we all need to freaking share our stories and our points of view. Um, because for me, I'm like, that's probably like the biggest way to take it out. You know what I mean? If we're all being honest, if more and more people are just honest about what's happening, like it's the better. If more and more people can admit, you know, I hate the word admit for this, but like I guess share that they do live with mental illness and you know, and that they're still like an okay person. You know, unfortunately, when people think of like mental illness, they only think of like the really extreme cases that are shown in the media. And then sometimes then like those cases are even like one really inappropriate to share and like two like heavily exaggerated or like you don't even really know because it's just like alleged this alleged that, you know. It's really unfortunate because it's just like there are a lot of, I don't know, it's just I'm not very happy with how the media portrays mental illness because I think it gatekeeps people with some mental illness and then it also just like heavily outcasts and like villainizes others. It's not the best and therefore like you know I do have my platform.
Yeah, unfortunately, with like other media, especially with Hollywood, it's very influential to people. But I liked how you're doing a lot more. I mean, like you were saying, you have a lot more everyday people on here talking about like what they're going through. I mean, even like with some of like your own YouTube stuff, like you're talking about like your own stuff. And I was actually looking through your channel because I remember there was a video that I like resonated with at like the beginning of quarantine. I think it might have actually been one of your quarantine videos, but like I think you're doing like a really good job when it comes to like people resonating with your stuff. I mean, like there's obviously a lot of good feedback when it comes to the stuff you're creating.
Oh, thank you. That's very, very kind of you to say. I try. I try. Like it is, you know, creating spaces like the Thoughtful Beast, and I'm sure like creating spaces like this too. Like this has been a great experience for me where I do feel comfortable. Like
Mm,
creating spaces like these, like it's not easy. And it's not easy because like, you know, having empathy and compassion isn't easy. It's just not easy because we're not our society doesn't really appreciate and celebrate safe spaces like these. Not
mm.
yet. Which makes them even more important.
Ooh, that's so big. So, I mean, since we're going on the whole topic of like YouTube and everything, was that something that just kind of like fell on your lap? Were you doing this for like a while? Like, I mean, were you just on it as like a viewer for a while and then it just came about? Like, how did you come across like YouTube as that space?
So it was it's not very exciting because basically it was a practical decision. It was a practical decision. Um, so again, like I was doing Twitch and stuff, and I got into this point where it became too toxic for me, and it wasn't helpful, and it wasn't fun anymore, and I got super stressed out. Um, and so I was like, well, how do I still make things? You know, how do I make things for people? Um, and I was like, YouTube, because also that gave me, I didn't have to live stream anymore. Like, dude, live streaming is not easy. It is not easy. That is a skill. Um, and I did get more used to it. And I will say, live streaming by yourself is the least fun for me. That is not a fun time for me. But that's a skill I acquired as well. But so I wanted to choose something where I didn't necessarily have to live stream anymore. Where I could make things on my own time and didn't have to dedicate like blocks of time. Like with Twitch, you're at least supposed to be streaming for like 4 hours. And that's a long part of my life, man. And so it didn't work out for me. And so because you know, YouTube was already YouTube. And so I was like, you know what? Okay, let's do it. Let's try it out. Um, and I how do I put this? For me, YouTube is like my end goal is not YouTube. YouTube for me is like a means to get to different goals. It's a great platform for being able to share knowledge and be who you are, you know, and it's like readily available, like obviously more than Twitch is, because some people still don't know what that is, right? Like everyone knows what YouTube is, or most people will know what YouTube is. So it's just like, oh, here's another, chance for me to continue making my things and hopefully reach like a greater audience. And then I stayed and I'm still going because it's it still is easier. Obviously, I know people like in San Diego, YouTubers, obviously Adrian and Marissa, where it's just like, when you do have that community and that support. Oh, and Rich. I'm going to shout out to Rich. Rich, I'm talking about you. Um, when you do have that support, it does make you stay on a platform longer. Like when I did Instagram fitness, the only reason why I stayed doing that for so freaking long is because I met a group of San Diego women who were so amazing and so authentic and so driven. And we would like meet in person too. Like we were like in person friends. And just having that sort of community on a platform can keep you going forever. Or for much longer than maybe you should have.
Ooh, that actually speaks a lot, especially when it comes to like the whole accessibility thing and support. It's like, yo, it's like you have more of a reason to be on a certain platform if you're getting like the right kind of vibes from it, like you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, after being on so many different platforms, I just, I, you kind of just, you need to look at what actually works for you. You can't be afraid to try a platform. Like when I look at Twitch, I don't look back and I'm like, fuck, I'm a failure. I mean, I did for a little bit because it was really fresh and I wasn't doing really well. But like looking back at it now, I was like, nah, dude, I tried something. I tried it wholeheartedly and it just wasn't for me. But I tried. Like I was on there for a freaking long time. And I tried to make it work with doing different things. And I did do really good work on, like my live stream, like in terms of like being authentically me and learning how to speak about my story publicly and being okay with crying on something like that. And then also like, like learning how to organize my time, like learning how to, that was the first place where I started interviewing people, and it was awkward at first. But so I don't look back at my time on Twitch and I'm like, well, what a waste of time. I'm just like, no, this is something I tried. It didn't work out and that's okay because I really did try. Like I gave it my best. And now I'm finding other platforms and other means that suit me better. And that's okay.
Which is absolutely fine because it seems like for like the time being, like you found your niche when it comes to like doing things because it's a lot like again, it's a lot more accessible. It's a lot easier on you to be doing this stuff. Like, yeah, you're still doing the live streams with like YouTube and everything, but it's like there is a lot less pressure when it comes to this because you just get to create now.
Yeah, I do. I do get to create now. I don't I think at first when I started with Twitch, I think I felt like the thoughtful beast does have to be this digital guise that is bigger than who I am. And then like I was just like, nah, fuck that. Like I don't want to do that. Like I still love that name. I am still the thoughtful beast, but now I don't feel like I'm in a place where I have to be like where it feels more pseudonym-y, if that makes sense. Like this is me, and whoever I decide to be this day, like that is it. That is it. That is my brand. My brand is me. I don't have to force myself into what I think my brand should be.
And you're also able to make like the most authentic kind of content too because it's like you're literally like embodying who you are, like you're being yourself, but you're also able to be yourself with like people, like especially like on your podcast and everything, you're able to like hold that space while being yourself because like I'm thinking like when it comes to Twitch it's just like, oh, there's a lot more pressure to hold on to like a certain kind of persona where it just feels like you kind of just feel like lost at that point.
Yeah, there's a big part of me that's like, dude, you need to be extroverted for that shit, and I am not. I am not an extrovert. I know a lot of people think I am an extrovert, and I understand why I come off as an extrovert, but I am not. That was like it was hard. It was hard, yo. Like, people stream for like maybe like 8 hours, like that's their full-time job. And like power to them. Like that's a lot. Even if you are playing video games and doing what you love, to be on, to be quote unquote on and being able to like be able to play video games, but also like attend to your audience is a freaking hard skill. and you have to have that kind of energy that does that. I mean, like, I don't want to be like me and an introvert and then have to push through like to 8 hours. Like that sounds awful, like even the extroverts, like that still takes time and energy. But like, why am I trying to be someone who I'm not? Like, who is that really helping? Like, even if I made a lot of money, like if that hurts me mentally, then no, it's not worth it to me.
It's just like, yo, just do whatever like fits best for you, regardless of whatever platform it is. Like you said, if it works for people on Twitch for like 8 hours a day, I mean, if that's like their day job when it comes to stuff, like good for them. But like, only do what feels like right for you. I'm like, there's no need to be on this kind of I don't know what's I forgot where I was going with this, but like, there's no need to like feel that pressure if you're not feeling like the platform and stuff.
Yeah. And I think that's hard for people to learn, because no one wants to be like a quote unquote failure. Everyone wants to be right on their first guess. But dude, that's putting like way too much pressure on yourself. Like it's too much. And and again, like going back to my whole like North Star thing, like even if I came to a point where I was like, YouTube isn't like fulfilling what I needed to fulfill, that's fine. If I get to that point and I find something better to actually do what I want to do, that's gonna be okay. Right? Because, like I said, like my thing is I want to service others, I want to help others, and I want to fulfill myself creatively. That, like, that does not have to equal YouTube, like because I know my goals defined enough, but it's still like open, like I know I'm gonna be fine. I can float to whatever if it serves me better. Because my goal isn't YouTube, my goal isn't Twitch, it's other things.
Yo, what was that like? What was that thing? That sounds like it should be on a shirt.
Oh no, you gotta, like, once you listen to this again, send it back to me and I'll put it on a shirt. And then I'll send it to you.
Another venture to go out to.
Merch. Yeah, I mean, like, merch is something I think about too, but I mean, I have a lot of things I'm thinking about.
That's an artist's mind. Sometimes like something will come up at like 11 p.m. like right as about what is my words right what are my words right now? Right as about you right as you're
Yeah,
going to sleep. It's like,
yeah,
oh man, I have this spark of like creativity.
I
Just
know.
happens.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. That's very true.
Oh, okay. But going into this last question right here, this one's a little bit like heavier and it's kind of like vague, but one thing I've been seeing, especially with like your platform, which I appreciate a lot, is or at least also came about during like back in June after like the passing of George Floyd, rest in peace. The series you were doing was listening to Black voices,
Hmm.
and one thing I thought was like, oh, that's super cool. Someone is like holding space for people to have like these conversations and everything. But I think the bigger question here is, why do you feel like it's important for like you or just artists in general to hold space for people? Like, we're even if it's not for like that specific topic, but just like in general.
Um, I think in general, in this day and age of like, I feel like an old person. In this day and age of YouTube and the internet, in this day and age, like we have a lot of power and possibility. We can make things, like, a lot of the viral videos, they are not like highly produced things. It's like someone tripping in another person's backyard, and it's hilarious, like, and it goes viral. And so for me, when in the surge of the Black Lives Matter movement, I was just like, what can I give of myself? And I was like, sometimes I can give money. I was not comfortable going to protests, because that just felt really unsafe. Also, like, my anxiety was really high and can get really high. Like, when quarantine started, the first time I went to Costco, I had a full on panic attack. So I was like, I'm not going to a protest and risking a panic attack where then other people have to take care of me. So, I was like, what can I do? What can I do? And it bugged me for a while. And I was like, my platform. I'm going to use my platform. And I think when you have things like that, when you have a voice, when you have a platform, for me, I feel like, yeah, dude, it is up to us to amplify the voices that need to be amplified. Sometimes it's going to be our own, and sometimes it's going to be other people's. Um, and for me, making that focus, having those segments of listening to Black voices and addressing racism in our own cultures, like those things are super important to me. And it was an easy shift because I'm like, this is mental health. Like, racism is a mental health topic to me. That's like an intersection, an intersectionality point, an intersection point. Um, it's really important, like even just thinking about like the lack of empathy, the lack of communicating and understanding, the lack of like we're going to really like pretend that poverty doesn't exist, or poverty like affects like people of color disproportionately. Like, we're not going to address that. Like that, like just even that is just like that is like huge gaslighting, like that's super gaslighting. That's like manipulating people. That is like mental health. Like, that creates poor mental health. Like, the system we're in creates poor mental health. It creates like instability. People are not getting help the way that like they need. People are not being believed or listened to, which creates a lot of pain and suffering, which will create more pain and suffering. It's just like it was so connected for me in my head. It was just really easy. I'm like, this all makes sense. Like, this all affects our mental health, like people hating on other people just because of the color of their skin. There's something going on, you know what I mean? Like, cognitively, there's something going awry. Like, it shouldn't be like that.
Ooh, it
So
just makes
yeah.
you. It just always go on.
No, that's all I had.
Oh, okay. I was just
All I
gonna
had.
say like when it comes to like you've addressed like a lot of things like on your podcast and everything, and it's just like wow, you didn't. I wouldn't think of because when I think of mental health, like my go-to thing is usually going towards mental illness, but like when you look at a lot of these things that are going on systematically, like culturally, like economically and everything, it's like oh, this is within the range of talking about mental health, and that's like so big, like especially now that you have like this platform. Like I mean, you started this podcast platform like what back in what was it during the pandemic
I
when this
started
came out?
during the pandemic because I needed a reason to like get out of bed. That is
Hmm.
literally why I started my live show.
And now you're doing like, and now you're holding like a lot of space for a lot of people that want to have like these deeper conversations about like mental health, like the Black Lives Matter movement, and like just culture in general, or just like any topic that goes along with mental health in general. And it's just like, yo, that's dope to have that kind of power to like do that on your platform, to host those kind of voices, to give them like a lot more power to speak as well. And I think that's again that's super dope to have.
Yeah, like, and that's the power kind of having your own platform and being your own boss. And, like you're a content creator. Like, a lot of the times for content creation, it's like be more niche, be more niche, be more niche. Like, and I would understand why some people would be like, oh, don't do that. This is no longer like a mental health podcast or mental illness podcast. But I'm just like, dude, it's my podcast. I can do whatever I want. And like, maybe this is me niching down because now I'm going for the people who do see, the intersect of social issues and mental health. Like, mental health is a social issue. So, like that's going to be my niche then. Like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And the people who are down with that, cool. And if you're not, there are like a million other like shows, podcasts out there. Like, no hard feelings. Like, no hard feelings, not at all. But it's just like, if I have this platform and it's mine, it's always going to be a priority of mine to stay true to myself.
Ooh, that is like that is really big, and to have that kind of thing, especially with like you're essentially reclaiming that power within your platform. I'm like, oh, you don't always have to go with like whatever you said before. Like you could switch it up and like especially like switching up, especially like with this point with the podcast and everything. It's like yeah, you're reclaiming a lot of strength when it comes to these conversations, and I feel like if that isn't what the thoughtful beast is about, I feel like that has to be it for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I do here. I do want to say something for maybe clarity. So I'm always going to prioritize being me and being authentic to my story um, and to what I want to do and my goals. Right, like that is my priority with what I make with a different whatever like podcast shows, like YouTube videos, everything. Like that is what I make and that is the path I choose. I do want to say that might that make it harder for me to make money and survive? Yeah, it might. It might. And I think there are a lot of creators out there like you need to know that. Like when you're creating, like you need to know your goals. And if your goals are making money, don't be ashamed of that. I mean, don't be fucking scummy either. Please don't be a scumbag. But like, like you can make that your priority, but you have to understand like the trade-offs of what that means. Maybe you won't, maybe if your priority is making money, you won't have as much freedom as I have. Maybe you are still going to be your authentic self, but it's still kind of a curated, censored self, which really honestly everyone has. Like even with me being me, I'm still somewhat curated, right? Like my YouTube videos, I can edit. Like I get to pick in the moment if I want to curse or not. And all that is fine, but you just have to be really realistic about like what you want. Making money isn't bad if that's your priority. That's not bad as long as you don't treat people poorly. If your priority is to be authentic and just really talk about what you want, that's great too. But maybe it will be hard to make money or harder to make money. You just have to really choose like what you want. And again, defining success for yourself is really important. Is really important because if you're not thinking about it, like say your priority is really my priority, but you haven't thought about it, so you're like judging yourself and you're like, when you look back at what you've done and you're accomplished and you're just like you're just thinking about how much money you've made, like you're going to make yourself feel bad for no reason when that wasn't your priority. I hope that makes sense. Like it's really easy to do that stuff. Like if your priorities aren't there and you don't know what they are, you're going to make yourself feel real bad for a long time unnecessarily. You know what I mean? Like, especially maybe an easier thing to think about is like views and numbers, like numbers of views, how many hours like you're watched and stuff like that. And I'm not saying like you never have to pay attention to those. No, like you do. You definitely do. That's always going to be part of all of our journeys. But again, like for me with my priorities, maybe the views matter less, but maybe, actual engagement matters more. Like, do people actually feel comfortable enough to reach out to me and comment on my stuff? Really defining that success for yourself will help you so much. And yeah, no, it will just help you so much with like going forward and making sure that you're actually on the right track for you.
Especially like if you're nitpicking at stuff that's not your priority, like you were saying, like you're gonna get lost looking at those views, looking at those numbers like all the time. Yes, it does matter to some extent, but it's like if that wasn't your priority in the first place, like it's gonna just you're gonna lose yourself. You're gonna get lost in the sauce if you do that kind of stuff. Like
Yes,
just
lost in the sauce.
like prioritize like what you want. Do you want authenticity? Do you want money? Like what is it? Like it's right, the table is right there. Like the whole like what the platform is going to look like for you is like right there. You just have to I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the word, but you have to just like yeah, just weigh out your options. What do you want out of this? Like do you want money? Do you want views? Do you want freedom out of it? Like just figure out what you want. That's really it.
Yeah. Yeah, figure out what you want and like just know that it's going to lead you into different places. And that's also kind of why like it's not really great to compare yourselves to other people unless you're doing it in this very like analytical way that's not hateful to like help you, like reach your goal. Like, you shouldn't just like blindly compare yourself to other people because we all have different priorities. Like it does not make sense to do that. Like,
Mm,
like the only way I would want to do that if it was some sort of like actual conversation to like, like, or some sort of mentorship or just some sort of like conversation so we can kind of like understand each other and help each other. But it shouldn't be into like, let's compare and then hate on each other and then more so ourselves. Like, it
ooh,
should never be that.
ooh, there was okay, so we're getting close to that advice section. I originally had a different question for this, but like with the vibe that this conversation is going, I kind of do have like a different question if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So one thing is like for just anyone that's an artist, like how do you be like your most authentic self?
How do you be your most authentic self? Well, okay, so the first thing that came in mind to my head is like, you need support. Um, you need to be just like, you need to be a little particular about who you let into your life and what kind of people you surround yourself in. Because if you surround yourself with people who are always telling you your shit, like, guess what? You're gonna like you're gonna think yourself a shit, and like you're not gonna get very far. If you're around people who don't support you, who like, and I'm not, oh, please do not misunderstand me for saying like, don't let anyone around you who disagrees with you. No. No, please do not turn your like circle of friends or your bubble into a circle jerk. That is not what I'm saying. That is not what I'm saying, because sometimes people need to also hold you accountable and be like, Trixie, you want to do that, but you know what? You haven't prepared anything for it. You actually haven't done any work. Like, do you really think this is like you're gonna like run into this project and have like a good time if you're not like preparing for it? No. Like, if you haven't like talked to your who you're working with, like maybe you'll magically make something together in a collaboration within an hour, but mostly you're probably going to be talking about what the hell is happening. Like, you need people in your life to hold you accountable too, but you need people who actually believe in you and love who you are. If you have people around you who need you to act a certain way, like, I don't know how else to put this, like if they need you to act a certain way so that you're Instagrammable, like, no, get the fuck out. Like, you need people who like actually love you for you, so that way like they support you and you are not deterred on your journey of like finding who you really are and being able to show that. it's
It,
it's really, for me, I feel like that's really, really important.
it's kind of like having people to enable you to be like your best self.
Yeah. It's just because, like, I've been in so many instances, like, I've been in so many relationships where it's just like I was not able to be myself. I just wasn't. And some of that was them. Some of that was me, like in my own things of like, well, I feel insecure, so I'm going to keep, so I'm going to keep acting this one way and pretending I'm this one way. And then like on the other side, I've had people who straight up were like emotionally and mentally abusive. And then I've had other people who just like, well, they didn't know who I was and they didn't really like care to find out or pick up on any of the subtle cues that was showing like, yeah, nope, nope, I'm uncomfortable. Like, you need to surround yourself with like thoughtful people, with compassionate people, with people who really do care about other people's feelings and, are concerned with actually being a good person who can learn and grow empathy. Like, that's really, really important.
Oh, that is such a nice way to just like I think that that is like the most wholesome way to go about it because like I mean like yeah, you need people to hold you accountable. You need people to like give you that kind of love and at the end of the day like everything that they're doing like is out of love and I think one thing that I personally learned is like yeah, letting certain people in your circle that might be like that end up being bad for you, especially if you don't like look at where was I gonna go with this? Something about red flags, but like well, it's a lot harder to grow into like your best self if you're surrounded with people with like so many red flags.
Yes. Yes. And I actually feel like if I mean, okay, well, if you're bad at like seeing red flags, right? Like, well, I guess here's a pointer. Like, like really be attuned to how they treat you and other people. Like if you're with someone who talks shit about everyone else, like like some people do that. Like they talk shit about everyone else. Like y'all could be at the same table and once that person walks away, they start talking shit about them. Pay attention to that stuff cuz like guess what? They're probably talking shit about you too. And like guess what? If they're talking that much shit, like it's probably not even about you. That's like their own insecurities. Like when people are that hateful, usually it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with like the crap that they're going through and they're coping with it horribly. And you don't need that in their, you don't need that in your life.
And with that being said, I mean like yeah, just keep like that kind of healthy circle too, because it's like health is wealth at the end of the day.
Yes. Yes, health is wealth. It is. It is. Like you will live a much happier life, like I there it's an Irish song, but I really like it and I learned it in college and it starts with like of all the money that I spent it in good company. And I was like, "Oh hell yeah." Like, like being in good company, being around people who are worth it and loving, like that shit's priceless. Cause with those people, you could like spend like what, like maybe you're all sharing like a single boba. Well, not now in COVID. Maybe pre-COVID, this meant you all like went out and shared a single boba, or maybe that even means like maybe you're fucking out treating like some friends to a lobster dinner because you can do that, and the money doesn't matter because it's the people that matter. Health is wealth. Like I'm real down with that.
Oh, yeah, honestly, yeah, that's also really big. And I guess just to end it off, especially since you brought up that whole I don't remember where that song is from either, but I've like heard that line before. But yeah, honestly, like the biggest thing for me right now, especially going into like oh man, I'm like closer to 30 than I am to like 20 right now, but company matters like so much. And I honestly got to be like honest right now, but yeah, thank you for being like such great company for this episode because like this was such a vibe, like straight up.
Oh yeah, yeah, this was fun. Thank you for having me.
With that being said, was there like any like shout outs or any plugs that you want to have before we end off this episode?
um yes, I guess. Should I start with plugs? Sure, I'll start with plugs. Um so very unshameless plug because this is what we're doing. Um please find me on the Thoughtful Beast. You can search anywhere. You can go to thethoughtfulbeast.com and find all the different things that I'm doing. I'm starting to promote my Patreon more, so I will do that here. The Thoughtful Beast. My Patreon is there so that I can, survive and still continue to make the things that I make because it takes a really long time to just make one video or even write one video. You know, YouTube videos, having guests and stuff on your podcasts. Alfredo knows, like, it takes time. There's a lot of energy spent on that, and I want to continue to do this for the rest of my life. So that. I do have my live shows on Mondays. Usually they're at 5:30 p.m. So you can see that on Facebook and YouTube, and those will turn into my podcast episodes. And then shout out to all those people like who have something to say and are doing it. Like, your voice can be powerful like with just your phone. Like luckily a lot of us have just our phone. And even like without your phone, like dude, go borrow your friend's phone or just like write things down, go to the library and publish like your poems on the internet. I used to do that with Zanga, if anyone knows what that is. And that's a long time ago. I'm dating myself,
The OGs
but
will
that's
know.
okay. um, But yeah, shout out to anyone like who has something to say and is trying to make it happen. You do not need a lot of money to start saying what you want to say. Be creative. Look around and see your resources. Do people have what you need to create what you want? How can you collaborate with them? Um, look for your resources. Look for people who can help you. Like, yeah, shout out to you, dude. Start recording, even if it's with your phone and you had to tape it to like a chair so it stay in place and shoot the angle you want. That's all good. And I've definitely done that myself within these past 6 months. So, yeah.
Oh, and yes, thank you again for sharing your time on this platform. This means a lot. And also, I'm pretty sure a lot of people will get a lot out of this conversation too. And even just thank you for like doing stuff on your own platform because it does mean a lot, even for like me too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having this. This is really cool. I'm really excited that you're doing this. Second season?
Yeah, let's go. So yeah, make sure to follow Trixie on all those platforms, everything. Support on Patreon. Look out for these upcoming projects as well as like the next few episodes of this podcast. And yeah, thank y'all again for supporting season 2. This is probably like the longest episode I've had like in general, but like yeah, this was such a vibe. So there's gonna be a lot more good vibing for the rest of the season. So make sure to stay tuned for the next episodes to come. So thank y'all again for listening. Peace.